Welcome back to Top 5. Andrei stood frozen in place, heart hammering in his chest as the bear emerged from the thick underbrush. The massive creature, with its dark fur and menacing, beady eyes, seemed to regard him with disturbing curiosity. He could feel the primal instinct to flee screaming through him, but his body was still in shock from the surreal sequence of events he'd already endured. Beside him, Lila displayed a calmness that cut through the chaos of Andrei's panic. Her eyes, sharp and focused, assessed the situation with a certainty he didn't possess. "Stay still," she whispered, her voice low yet commanding, as if she were addressing a wild animal rather than a man on the verge of losing his mind. "Don't provoke it." Andrei could barely nod, transfixed by the sight of the bear, who seemed to be contemplating its next move. Lila was right, there was a delicate balance in nature, and losing his cool could spell disaster. It was a bizarre juxtaposition. How could she be so composed while he felt as though he were standing on the edge of a chasm? The bear sniffed the air, and Andrei, instinctively, held his breath. He had heard stories of how bears attacked when threatened, and the thought sent a shudder through him. Just when he thought they might be done for, Lila made her move. She stepped slightly in front of Andrei, tightening her grip on the makeshift spear she had fashioned from a sturdy branch. "You need to make noise," she instructed. "Force it to back away." Andrei found his voice, a shrill echo of courage reflecting his frantic heartbeat. "Hey! Get away," he shouted, his voice cracking. The bear's head turned toward them, its nose twitching as it processed this new development. But Lila didn't let up. She slammed the end of her spear against the ground, creating a thudding sound that reverberated through the air. "Back off, bear," she yelled, and surprisingly, the creature paused, almost considering before it began to retreat slowly into the foliage. Relief flooded Andrei, washing away the terror that had gripped him just moments before. "Nice work," he said breathlessly, glancing at Lila as he steadied himself. She met his gaze with an enigmatic smile, and he couldn't help but feel gratitude wash over him. Her presence felt grounding in this unforgiving wilderness. After the bear had fled, they moved a safe distance away from where they had encountered the creature, finding a small clearing where they could set up a makeshift camp. Lila quickly gathered materials, her confidence radiating as she began to start a fire. Andrei watched, marveling at how effortlessly she moved through the tasks, fashioning a shelter with branches and leaves. As the flames flickered to life, he joined her, helping as much as he could, although he still felt clumsy and inept, nothing like the man he was back in the concrete world of fashion and glitz. "You really seem to know what you're doing," he said, a hint of admiration in his voice. Lila glanced up, her face illuminated by the warm glow of the fire. "I grew up in these woods," she confessed, her voice softening. "Taught by my mother how to survive." "Your mother?" Andrei asked. "Who is she?" Before Lila could respond, a sudden rustling in the distance interrupted them, drawing their attention. They exchanged wary looks, their instincts sharpening. It was a group of hunters, their voices low but filled with the brash arrogance of men intoxicated by their own bravado. "Dogs," Lila murmured, her posture tense as she listened. The sounds of barking grew closer, and without thinking, she reached for Andrei, pulling him deeper into the cover of the trees. They crouched low, and he could hear the faint rustling of leaves as the men approached. The hunters were boisterous, discussing their recent conquests in exaggerated tones, oblivious to the danger of their surroundings. Andrei's heart raced, adrenaline pumping through his veins as they waited, hoping to remain undetected. Lila turned to him, her gaze fierce. "We need to move. We can't let them find us." With urgency, they crept through the underbrush, until they reached a more secluded area away from the hunters. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they found a hidden nook behind a cluster of bushes. They listened intently as the men and their dogs passed by, scarcely breathing until the sounds began to fade. Once the coast was clear, Lila let out a deep breath, her shoulders loosening beneath the tension. "That was close," she said. Andre felt a newfound admiration for her. "You handled that perfectly." "Thanks," she replied, a playful tilt to her smile. "But we can't just hide. We need a plan." "Agreed." "What now?" he asked, feeling more alive and engaged than he'd felt since being dragged into this nightmare. "We steal their supplies," Lila said, her eyes lighting up with a sense of mischief. "They likely have food, equipment, anything we could use to our advantage." Andre couldn't help but chuckle at the audacity of her idea. "You're serious, aren't you?" "Very." She grinned and then leaned closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "But we'll need to act quickly before they catch on." They made their way toward the hunters' camp, carefully navigating through the underbrush, adrenaline fueling their every move. As they crept closer, Andre gleamed through the trees, spotting a fire pit and some gear carelessly strewn about. A half-empty cooler beckoned him, and his stomach growled at the sight. He hadn't eaten since he found himself in this nightmare. "On my mark," Lila whispered, her voice sharp and focused. 1, 2, 3, go." They burst from their hiding place, rushing into the heart of the camp. The hunters were momentarily caught off guard, eyes widening in shock as Andre and Lila dove for the cooler, tossing aside beer cans and snacks with frantic energy. Andre grabbed an armful of provisions and felt exhilarated by th. "Hey! What are you doing?" one of the hunters shouted, and they quickly turned to flee as the men scrambled to respond. With their arms filled with stolen supplies, they sprinted back through the trees, laughter echoing in the air as they darted back to the safety of their hidden nook. The thrill of their success was intoxicating, the weight of the earlier dangers momentarily forgotten. Once they were safely hidden within the thick foliage, they collapsed against a tree, breaths mingling with laughter. Giddy from the adrenaline and their victory, they opened the cooler, pulling out bottles of alcohol. "Let's celebrate," Andre said, his spirits lifting higher with every sip he took. Lila's eyes sparkled with laughter as they clinked their bottles together, drowning the fear and chaos in their wild and impulsive moment of triumph. The liquor warmed them from the inside out, and as they continued to drink, their worries about hunters and bears faded into the background. Underneath the jungle canopy, a new kind of intimacy began to blossom between them. As the sun dipped below the horizon, orange and pink hues painting the sky, the firelight flickered against Lila's face, and Andre was caught in her emerald gaze. He felt the heat of her body next to his, the charged energy between them buzzing like electricity. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked suddenly, her voice softening as she looked away, contemplative. "You know, your old life?" He shook his head, truth slipping from his lips. "Not really. It was hollow. I was living for everyone else's approval, but now I feel more alive than I ever did." Lila smiled, and in that moment, something shifted, a growing attraction, ignited by their shared defiance of the danger surrounding them. They were just two people trapped in a nightmare, finding solace in each other amidst chaos. As darkness enveloped them, they found themselves drawn closer, their comfortable camaraderie turning into something far more intense. It was as if the jungle itself conspired to weave their fates together. The fire crackled, the night air thick with tension as Andre leaned closer, emboldened by the alcohol and the fiery connection they shared. Their lips met, a gentle brush that quickly deepened into something unexpected and passionate. It felt both thrilling and terrifying as they surrendered to the warmth radiating between them, the walls around their hearts crumbling under the weight of their shared vulnerability. The night stretched on, the sounds of the jungle a backdrop to their intimacy as they lost themselves in one another. They collapsed into the grass beneath the stars, the world around them fading until it was just the two of them, lost and found in each other's arms. As dawn began to break, Lila stirred beside him, the remnants of their wild night still clinging to the air. Andrei's gaze drifted to her peaceful expression, a sense of admiration washing over him. But as the sun's rays filtered through the trees, reality crashed back in, pulling him from their blissful cocoon. Lila turned to him, her expression shifting from warmth to apprehension. "I need to tell you something," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "What is it?" Andrei asked, concern creeping into his voice. "I didn't come here to help you find yourself," she began hesitantly, her eyes searching his for understanding. "I'm Valeria Delgado's daughter." The words hung heavy in the air, wrapping around them like a cold shroud. Confusion warred with disbelief in Andrei's chest. He studied her face, the warmth of their earlier connection beginning to chill as the weight of her identity crashed over him. "Wait," he breathed, trying to process the revelation. "You're telling me you're Valeria's daughter? The same Valeria who—" "Yes," she interrupted, panic flashing in her eyes. "But please let me explain." But as she began to speak, Andrei felt the walls between them rise once more. The woman who had risked everything to break him was the one who had stood before him, bravely. Caught between desire and betrayal, he found himself at war within. This was no longer just a struggle for survival. Now, emotions collided in a fierce battle of love and resentment. The sun rose higher, lighting the way for a confrontation he never wanted to face. In that moment, their world shuddered, no longer at the mercy of jungle spirits or hunters, but entangled in the inescapable truth of their lives. And as shadows danced between them, Andrei couldn't shake the feeling. This was only the beginning of a dangerous game, one that could tear them apart or bind them together forever.